Hey guys, what's going on? It's Cake Jostello, and in light of my Old World of Darkness group getting back together and hopefully playing some games soon, I thought it'd be cool to show everyone my various Old World of Darkness books. So without further ado, we're going to start with Vampire the Masquerade, the main game in the line of Old World of Darkness games. And right here I have a copy of the revised edition core rulebook, still in a package that I bought it from Amazon. I don't know if it's the original packaging, probably not, I don't know. And this is actually the same book, but what I did is I took the pages out and I put it in plastic sleeves, just because it was the exact same book, but it was really, like, the cover itself was really wrecked, so I decided to just give it some star treatment. So yeah, it's the same book, but see, just all in plastic papers. I did this to a copy of 2nd edition that I had, the only copy of 2nd edition I found as well. I'm not sure if the situation was as bad as it was for the core rulebook for revised edition, but I just thought it's cool to do anyways, just to keep it nice and safe, being the core rulebook and the parts that players will be looking at the most, even though I don't actually think I'm going to be using 2nd edition. I think it's just cool to keep it safe like that. Up next we have the Guide to the Camarilla, which is the main group of vampires in Vampire the Masquerade, and essentially this is what normal players start off as. Typically from one of the 7 clans. You have Ventru, Nosferatu, Bruja, Toreador, Gangrel, and I guess that must be Tremere, if nothing else. I don't know. But so this would be like the main 7 kinds of vampires that you'd start from, and they're like kind of the old school vampires. They set all the laws and everything pretty much, at least that are like normally expected to be followed. They uphold the Masquerade, which is like just saying, like, you know, you can't have vampires revealing themselves to outsiders. And then there's the contrasting group, which is the Sabbat, which is a newer group of vampires. Mainly it's the Zamisi, which are like flesh and bone changing vampires, and the La Sombra, which are like shadow controlling vampires. And there's still like other kinds of vampires, like anti-tribe, anti-tribu vampires from these groups that are in the Sabbat. I mean, you could be like any vampire really and be on part of one of the 2 main groups. Doesn't matter what your actual clan is, but it's like typically those are the clans that would go with each group. They have like this, I forget what this thing is called, but it's like this really cool giant behemoth monster that they can make and stuff. They have a lot of cool powers if you were trying to be a darker vampire. Next we have the various by night books, which I have, which are source books for specific cities. One of the most popular cities to play Vampire the Masquerade in is Chicago, because there's this big war between the vampires and the werewolves. I know it's a very popular setting, even though I don't really know much about the book itself. And then I have Montreal by Night, which is actually a Black Dog Game Factory publication, which is like an imprint part of White Wolf that produces for adults only books, so rather adult. One, I don't know if I can show you the pictures. Let's see, there's DC by Night, which I think this is one of the older ones. I can kind of tell from the bordering that they're using. That's an older one. And then I also have Berlin by Night. I heard some negative stuff about this on the internet, but I guess I could hear negative stuff about anything on the internet. But I don't know, maybe it's good. Tell me in the comments. Tell me good or bad things. I guess I'm expecting bad things though. And then New Orleans is another very popular place for like a setting for Vampire the Masquerade. I think this is where like the actual get together of fans for Vampire the Masquerade usually is in New Orleans. I'm pretty sure it is. Put in the comments what that get together is called, and tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. I think I'm right though. And then I also have, this is my last by night book, is, well, for vampire at least, which is Los Angeles by Night. And yeah, it's as much as you'd expect. It's Los Angeles at nighttime and with vampires. And then the next book I have is The Prince's Primer, which is like kind of like a little guidebook on being a prince. You know, get you in that like mood. It has the different like stuff on being a prince. Sort of like, you know, just if you're playing a prince character, or, you know, if you're the storyteller and you want to get a good mindset of being a prince, it's a good book. Then there's Ghouls, Fatal Addiction, which is the ghoul book, the guidebook for being a ghoul, which are vampires' helpers. Like, they get given vampiric blood, but their blood itself isn't drained, so they don't become vampires. They just get weaker powers, and they can still go out during the day and stuff. They're obviously not as strong as vampires, but they're, you know, if you want to play something interesting. And then I have Children of the Night, which is a cool book. It's a book of the different vampires in the world of darkness, some of the more popular characters. I think this must have been one of the later books in the series, you can tell from the border. And it's just cool to have a book of the vampires that came out through the series of Vampire the Masquerade. And this was I think first edition for playing this about. I know this is a really early book in the series, and it's basically just the guide to this about, but the first edition. So I mean, be outdated information compared to the newer one, but still worth reading if you're being a Sabat character. Now this should have been with my By Night series, kind of. This is Dark Colony, which it's a regional source book for New England, which is where I live. So I got really good information from reading this. My game is set within this place. I don't know how well it's actually going to follow Dark Colony. I want to kind of just do stuff on my own originally, but I'm going to try to have it like call back to some stuff in Dark Colony. I think by now some of the stuff in Dark Colony could also be considered outdated, because it's one of the earlier books, and I mean outdated in the sense of like, well, things could have changed from what they were like in this book to now, you know, it's like 20 years later essentially. And then I have Blood Magic, Secrets of Thaumaturgy, which is one of the two books, I think, that are based on blood magic. I'm pretty sure there's another one, but it's a book on like Tremere stuff, I believe. Is it just Tremere, or is Zamisi in here as well? It just says Thaumaturgy. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And then I have the Vampire Storyteller's Companion as well. It's just a shorter book, but I mean, it does exactly what it says it does, which is, you know, gives you little hints on being a storyteller, you know, lesser bloodlines, new weapons, etc. And then this is another earlier book. It's Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand, which is a secretive organization within the Sabbat, kind of like their best players, their assassins, you know, stuff like that. And then the last regular source book I have for Vampire the Masquerade is Elysium, which is pretty sure it's just a guidebook for Elysium, which is just the areas in vampire society where like no one's allowed to use their powers. Not that they physically can't, but like you're not supposed to, and it's like where everyone, even if they're at odds with each other, can get together and kind of feel safe. Not that you know, that Elysium is always maintained. There's always people that are gonna break it, and when that happens, you have the rules for what to do to those people, you know? Next up, we have the different clan books. I'm going to start with the 7 clans of the Camarilla. I have 2nd edition clan book from Bruja. Actually, that might be 1st edition, I don't know. Since it was probably the first clan book, it might be 1st edition. Someone check me on that in the comments. And then the revised edition for Bruja. Then the same with the earlier edition of Gang Rule. And then the revised edition as well. one of my favorite vampires. These are the ones that are typically are the ones that are turning into like different animals and stuff, even though I know a couple other groups have animalism, and they also can like turn their claws really sharp and stuff like that. And then I have the earlier and later editions of Malkavian. These are the crazy vampires. They have a special power that allows them to get insight through their craziness and stuff like that. Pretty cool stuff. Then we have Nosferatu, the earlier and revised edition clan books. The really ugly ones. They becoming a Nosferatu automatically makes you like really ugly and stuff, and it's cool if you want to create an interesting character, but you also have a lot of problems to deal with. Like, you can't, just be seen by mortals and stuff like that. You gotta live in the sewers, stuff like that. I don't know if I want to be like that all the time. And then, Tremere, which are the thaumaturgical vampires. They have cool blood magic. I don't know too much about them, even though I did play Tremere as my second run through in a vampire and a VTMB. And then I think I only have the earlier edition for Ventru, which stinks. But they're basically like leadership type vampires most of the time. They're really like seen as like rich type aristocrat-y vampires, and they usually run the show in the Camarilla. I also just found out I did have an earlier edition of that Toreador book, which was the artsy vampires from the Camarilla. It should have been in that earlier group, but I just found it now, so I'll just show you that. And yeah, they're just considered like the artsy vampires. Their weakness is art, kind of. Like, if they see something that's too beautiful, they have to stop it and admire it and stuff. It's if you want to play a hipster vampire, there you go. Then this is one of the two groups of vampires that run the Sabbat, the La Sombra. They're the Shadow People. I have the earlier clan book for them. And then there's the Zamisi, which is the other major clan from the Sabbat, the Flesh and Bone Crafters. I think that's a really cool power. One of my players is Zamisi, who was actually bitten by Guy Fieri. It's an interesting story. And then there are 4 clans that aren't really grouped in with either one, although they can be in either the Camarilla or the Sabbat. But there's the Assamites, which are Middle Eastern, African, like assassin vampires. They're pretty cool. They have special shadow powers, kind of. Not like shadow controlling powers like the Sombra, but like different kind of like hiding powers, I believe. Check me on that. Then there's the Giovanni clan book. They're like incestuous Italian mafia vampires. They deal with like necromancy and stuff, so if you want to like talk to the dead, things like that. If you're not afraid of just being an incest character, then Giovanni's group for you. Then there's Ravnos, which are I don't know much about them. It just says they're gypsies. I forget what they do, but they kind of just, they would always remind me of, I would always get them mixed up with the Assamites and stuff. Oh man, this is embarrassing. And it looks like a couple of pages or stuff. That sucks. But yeah, they do something. They exist. And then there's the Setites. They get their powers from a serpent god, Set, or Setite. Oh, it would just be Set, wouldn't it? Yeah. And yeah, if you want cool snake powers and being a vampire, then this group is for you. So that was all of the Vampire the Masquerade books I have. I definitely have a lot more World of Darkness books to show you if you're interested in that. So check out my other videos on my channel down below. Thanks.